This is genius.
This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
I've never seen so many mullets in my life.
No, it's just about feeling good.
You had more chins than a Chinese phone book for a while.
Man.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah. I mean, he's right. He said, Goonies never say die. We're going.
We got this.
All right.
I was pulling the trigger, but the safety was on.
I just Randy Black Eagle.
That's it. Boom.
That's my.
That's how we roll. Just drop the mic and walk away.
I had a version of buck fever on a doe, right? My first animal that I shot.
How does a guy regain control?
So let's start with some of the most basic forms of what you might hear that are crossover target to hunting, target panic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once you let your mind understand that that's okay, you allow that pin to float, and then you worry about executing your shot. That's what you should be able to do, right? That's where, like I said, one of the chapters I talk about in the book is using a tension style release from a hinge, why it's beneficial. There's tips on how to use a tension style release. And it comes down to when somebody's shooting with a index finger or a thumb button release, if they're really so preoccupied in their mind as to what their pin's doing down there, they start to forget about everything else down here. They start to shoot a weak shot. They start to break down their form.
Today on Gritty, my guest is my good friend Phil Mendoza, and our topic is targeting buck fever. Phil is a stud, period. Not just because he's an incredible hunter, archer, trained to hunt champion, owner of Alpha Bowhunting and the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge, and not because he's the owner of the biggest archery shop in Denver, although that resume is pretty sick. No, Phil is a stud because of his character. Quote, the best index to a person's character is how he treats people who can't do him any good, and how he treats people who can't fight back. Abigail Van Buren. And that quote about sums up Phil and why I like him. He's been a guest on the podcast before. Early on when I started the Gritty Bowmen podcast, Phil and Aron Snyder went on an epic bighorn sheep hunt, and Aron tells the story on Gritty Bowmen episode 24 and 30. More recently, Phil was a guest on episode 255, where he and our friends from Fit for the Hunt talked about physical conditioning and the mental game. Those have been popular episodes, and if you've never heard them, I recommend you check them out. Not too long ago, Phil wrote a booklet that he titled Targeting Buck Fever. Every hunter, every archer has struggled at one time or another with buck fever. The Urban Dictionary defines buck fever as nervousness felt by novice hunters when they first sight game. Which is absolute rubbish because buck fever can affect both new and experienced hunters. When the stakes are high, when you're on that once-in-a-lifetime hunt, when it's the last hour of the last day, when the buck of your dreams presents a last-second shot, buck fever can wreck you. So how do you rise to the occasion, hold your mud, and crush that shot? Well, that's the discussion that Phil and I have on today's podcast. It's good stuff. Take a listen, and if you like what you hear, do me a favor and link up with Phil on his Alpha Bowhunting Instagram and YouTube channels, and check out his book on Amazon. As always, thanks for tuning in to Gritty and making this show possible. Good? Check. I just got done running like 5 miles up in Evergreen.
Were you running from someone, or you just doing it for fun?
8,800 feet. Fun's like it's more like, to be alpha, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you like that segue, Dwayne? Did you like that? Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. No, I hate running in general. But after hiking and running and just doing so much on my legs through this past hunting season for the last, basically since August, whatever fitness I have in the cardio department, I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of guys will back off and they won't exercise again until a couple months, till June, a few months before season. They'll try to get back in shape. But, dude, I'm too old for that, At 43, I'm like, okay, you got some fitness. It's much easier to maintain than it is to just let it go and then try to get it back and let it go and get it back.
I know what you mean. I just got back from a week in Orlando with my family.
Yeah.
Disney and the whole bit, right?
Right.
And I didn't say no to a whole bunch of food. Let's just put it that way. So bulk phase is in full effect. But, first thing I did when I got home was I jumped on the treadmill. I I prefer to run there than run the mountains. You get the mountains, but a little lower impact on my knees.
Well, it is nice. Like when I'm running uphill for the most part for the same reason. Like I when I run uphill, it doesn't hurt the joints and stuff, and I can get my heart rate up pretty high without the wear and tear. And then when I come down, I kind of just gently jog. Like I don't really put much into it, but on the way up, yeah, I'm burning it out pretty good, which kind of like hunting, So,
yes, sir.
Yes. All right, folks. So, I'm at No Limits Archery with Phil Mendoza and Mr. Alpha Bowhunting himself, and we're gonna chat a little bit tonight about targeting buck fever. And you actually wrote, what would you call this?
That's a booklet, right?
It? Book or
it's a booklet. You know what? It's call it what you will. It's a short piece of reading material, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it's more in that booklet category than book. Book. You know.
Okay, I can go with that.
Yeah.
Targeting Buck Fever by Phil Mendoza. And, for people who don't know who you are, and most people should because you've been on the podcast a couple of times now.
Sure.
And you run the biggest archery shop in Denver. And you put on the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge.
Yeah.
And if anybody followed that over the summertime, that was just a blast. You do a head-to-head competition where you put it's one-on-one against a guy or gal that is your competition, and you move through a bracket to a championship.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And part of that head-to-head, what lasts like 2 minutes maybe?
2 to 3 minutes depending on
how fast you go. And it's basically a shoot-off.
Yeah.
With your heart rate a little elevated because there's some physical component, but mostly it's, 5 targets?
It's 5 targets, yes.
And anyway, it is a blast. There's a great community that comes out and supports it. And on the Alpha Bowhunting YouTube channel, you can watch the videos that you collected throughout last year. And I have videos, a few on my YouTube channel as well, of the event. And you were the subject of this bighorn sheep sitting behind us.
Yes.
On the podcast early on when Aron and I first started together. And Aron told the story about this sheep hunt with you.
Sure.
And I think a 2 or 3 part series. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
But it was an awesome, epic adventure. You were able to take this ram with your bow in a unit here in Colorado what's the success rate?
So they usually, I guess the few years before the year that I drew, and then I haven't checked honestly after that. But it's about 10 tags they give in the unit, and it's in some seasons with archery equipment, one person would tag out. There's a few seasons that no one tagged out. So it's roughly a 10% success unit with archery equipment.
Or less, really, because there are years where no one gets it.
Right. So that year there was actually 2 of us, one of the Clum boys shot a really nice ram the same year. So the 2 of us were the only 2 that killed that year. So we actually bumped the success rate up a little bit.
A little bit high that year.
Yeah.
Well, it took extreme fitness, took a lot of mental toughness, I think. Anyone who hasn't seen that podcast, it's because it's one of our originals. Yep. You can go back, and I recommend you watch it because Aron photographed like minute by minute the adventure, and as you watch Aron and I do the podcast, it's overlaid with a ton of photos.
Right.
And it's just a great story.
Oh man, I tell you, it's one of those almost painful experiences that you can't get enough of, you know? And enough that Braden and I went back the following year. We drew our deer tags and hunted some of the similar area, not the exact same area, and it was no less painful and no less of an adventure, really. Yeah. Because it was great, and I have a little bit more finished video on that. I spent some time videoing that hunt on our YouTube channel too, so it's a pretty cool experience.
Well, I'm glad we're here tonight. You're actually doing a series of classes here at No Limits for the next, I don't know.
It's something that we're hoping to do ongoing. So we dabbled a little bit last winter with some workshops and some classes, and it went really well. With the response was good. We filled our classes the few times we did it. So what I decided to do now moving forward is, obviously from the whole experience that you get at a pro shop, from the sales side, being able to practice, and there's also so much more that we do behind the scenes, from the tuning and just the education side of things, that the coaching, that a lot of people don't. Sometimes they're not sure how to ask the right questions. Maybe is the best way to say it.
Yep.
And so instead of me waiting for certain people to ask those questions, I've just tried to put out some workshops and some classes that are touching on some different topics, from tuning to just general shot execution and that kind of thing, to where we can start to better educate our customer base as well.
Yeah. Well, Dwayne the Rock Sessions, my buddy Dwayne, he signed up for the classes tonight, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go to these classes," and I was like, "Well, I want to check them out too." And as much as I know about archery, there's a lot I don't know, and I've been fortunate to be around a lot of archery, what I would classify as archery nerds. People can call them technically capable people. I like nerd. It makes me feel better about myself, having not the technical skills. But I've been around a lot of guys like Aron and you and Corey Miller at Triple X Archery in Mount Rainier, Oregon, and Rainier, and I just. But I'm entering a phase where I'm starting to enjoy building my own arrows and figuring out how to tune my own bow. And these are all the things that you're going to start covering in some of these classes.
Oh, yeah. So. It's all part of what, the thought process might be that it's counterintuitive for me as a salesman in this industry to teach my customers what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't feel that way. I just feel that, if we can, teach someone how to work on some of their own equipment, well, there's going to be other things that may come about. There's going to be times where they may hit a sticking point, and they're still going to need us as a reference to help them out. And I just want to be that open book with the customers, because I really, I've said it for so many years to a lot of my customers. I was on the other side of the counter for years, as a customer, and going to different pro shops, and then it started getting competitive with shooting, and then it got to the point where I was learning a lot of things the hard way. And even at the pro shop, it was like pulling teeth at certain pro shops to get any kind of information. So with that, it was like, man, I just don't like that. It doesn't feel open. It doesn't feel welcoming to me. So that's where my vision of what I've been trying to create here has just been always that of, hey, if we don't know, we're not going to lie to you. We're going to go down the steps to figure it out. And with archery, there's not a lot of black and white. There's a lot of gray, So that's where, if you know some of the basic principles and some of the things and some of the experiences we've learned from, then we can usually tackle most any issue that comes about.
Yeah. Well, something that we didn't mention a moment ago was that you also won the Train to Hunt championship a few years back. You're usually competing in it each year, and you're finishing at the top or near the top. And you have competed in archery competitions.
Yeah.
And you've killed a lot of animals, Phil. Great animals.
I've tried.
So you've got kind of this all around package of knowledge, and so, because someone might ask, well, because we're about to get into this targeting buck fever, well, what makes Phil qualified to talk about this? And I got to tell you, man, like, as soon as you think you're done with buck fever, it comes back, because it's nerve-wracking doing Train to Hunt.
Sure.
It's nerve-wracking doing the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge. And there were people I watched that crushed the 3D courses, which were pretty relaxed, and you just kind of go out there and you shoot for the day. And then as soon as they hit the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge, they wet the bed. They missed those targets. And those were close, 20, 30, 40.
I think, we didn't go much past 45 yards, even though I was at the finals.
Mm-hmm. And so I've noticed that, and I would argue that that's a form of buck fever.
Sure.
Choking in any competition. I've never felt it quite as intense as I have with the animal of my dreams kind of walking out in front of me after not seeing anything for 7 days, and here's your magic moment, that you've been dreaming of for 360, days.
Sure.
So I want to talk to you today about targeting buck fever and sort of your insight and your viewpoint on this. And in here, in your introduction, you start out with a story,
Right.
Why don't you?
So I just want, and like you said, what would make me qualified for that? I would just say that this is my point of view, my perspective on the subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being in the platform that it's not just my experiences that I'm pulling from, it's all my customers that I get to talk with every day, right? So it's something that we're a sponge in many, many forms, but I was very careful not to call the book Overcoming Buck Fever, right? Because it's like you said, it's something that you could maybe keep under wraps or tackle for the most part, and then you don't really know, but it's really anxiety based with in regards to what happens, whether you call it target panic or buck fever or the whatever version in between. So, but yeah, I mean, I talk about it in the intro. My first story in there was my first hunt, my first rifle hunt that I actually had a rifle in hand. I'd been tagging along with my dad for years, and buck fever, and it's all. Nothing really matches. I got a picture of a bull elk on the cover of a book that's called Buck Fever, right? So it's one of those things that I had a version of buck fever on a doe, right? My first animal that I shot, and unloading a clip on that deer and hitting it, not very well, and then missing, and then loading another round and finally putting the animal down. And it's not from a standpoint, I don't talk about it in a light sense to shed light on, hey, I wounded this animal and it didn't die quickly,
right.
And then I finally was able to put it down. It's not from that standpoint. It's from the standpoint of you can have it on any animal at any time, gun in hand, bow in hand, doesn't matter. And it's really, I interviewed Tim Gillingham and Aron Snyder in the book and asked a couple questions with them and put some of their responses in there. But yeah, it just goes back to that moment of truth, right? It's that moment that happens that we all really strive to do more or to experience more, because it's hard to describe. You can't really properly describe it. And if you're trying to talk to a non-hunter or someone else about your experience, you can't even truly give them that feeling as to what you're going through. But knowing that there's so many problems that stem from that one moment, that if you don't handle it properly and you start to disengage and you start to let the nerves that are overcoming you kind of take over, well, some people may be not able to draw their bow. Some people can draw their bow. They don't lose muscle function, but they lose the ability to connect with the brain to what's going on. Other people, you put the sight in front of them at that point, and then it's just, a funny story that I talk about. I've done some seminars on this topic, and one of our early bow hunts, big game hunting, a friend of mine and his dad and his brother, we were out hunting, and I've got the hunting magazine, the recent hunting magazine. It's got the giant bull elk on there, 360 plus. I don't know, it was a big bull. The unit we're hunting is an over-the-counter unit in Colorado. Right? Okay. We're lucky to see 260 class bulls there.
Right.
There's not to say there couldn't be something in that 300 class, but long story short, we come back to camp and he's telling us about the story. He can't even get the words out of his mouth. He's still excited from what happened, right? Man, I don't know what happened. I just, did you get a shot off? Yeah. I drew back and I shot. I said, well, how far was it? I don't know. I don't know. So what do you mean you don't know? Did you not range it? No, I just, he came out chasing the cows and I said, okay, well, what pin did you use? I don't know. I just.
Well, I laugh, but I've been there before, dude.
Yeah, right. But that's the thing, and that's where. What do you chalk that up to? If you're talking about that with your buddies, and you don't actually know how to start to tell that person, hey, there's a couple things you could have done that'll probably get you dialed back in, or at least put you back in control into allowing you to make the proper decisions, and maybe. Whether it's to range it at least, or to remember what pin you used,
dude. I've been there where it's an utter blackout.
Sure.
And I can't remember anything from the moment I saw the animal and I started to draw my bow to it running off. I'm like, what the heck happened? Yeah. So what is that?
It's the anxiety, right? And that's where it's that disconnect that, and there's no, I put my own definition. I kind of created what I felt my own definition was in the book, and I kind of described that a little bit. And it's, the beauty of it, I guess it is there's not a right or wrong answer. There's understanding that, yeah, it's very much a form of anxiety. It's very much, what that anxiety does to you is different for everybody, you know?
Yeah. And
that's where, I gave some examples of some things that could help. I gave some examples of some things that other people have tried. I mean, there's some stuff that if people were going to look at that book, and one of the chapters in there specifically that I interviewed Ben Greenfield on, people are probably would have no idea why that information would be in this book, right?
Yeah.
Because it talks about cold therapy treatment and some of that stuff on how, you know, conditioning the vagal nerve and everything within what you can do to do that, how it could benefit you in that elevated moment of excitement, you know? So there's things in there that, like I said, it's maybe
broad reaching
outside of the box. But at the same time, I just touched on some personal stories, some personal experiences, some interviews with some people that I valued their opinion on, and it was fun. Honestly, it was one of those things that I'd always kind of wondered if I could put something together like that from start to finish. And oddly enough, I really enjoyed it. I'm almost done with my second piece. So,
well, it says in here that the subtitle is A Bow Hunter's Guide to Regaining Control.
Right.
So, you know, with that in mind, you know, we've talked about buck fever or target panic or whatever, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, how does a guy regain control? So let's start with some of the most basic forms of what you might hear that are crossover target to hunting, target panic, right? And in regards again to what people identify as that, and let's just say that you're shooting at a target, and you're let's say you're. It's funny. I'm going to load a seminar that we just did here at the shop talking about some of this. Yeah. So some people might say, well, you know, how do you aim on a target? Well, I raise my pins from the bottom and I start coming up, or I start from the top and I start coming down. And when you think about it, that makes zero sense, right? Because all they're doing is timing their shot. They're starting to raise their pin up until it gets into the target, and then they're timing and they're trying to hammer it, or top to bottom, or left to right. It's all something that they've created to try to help mask the problem that they don't properly know how to aim, that they don't properly accept that everybody has pin movement. Everybody's pin moves. When you talk about the high-level target archers, they've tweaked their system, their form, the multiple areas of practice with the balance and everything to where they're let off to their draw length, to where they can get very little, to pin where it almost seems like it's no pin movement, but there's still pin movement. Yeah. Once you let your mind understand that that's okay, you allow that pin to float, and then you worry about executing your shot. That's what you should be able to do, right? That's where, like I said, one of the chapters I talk about in the book is using a tension style release from a hinge, why it's beneficial. There's tips on how to use a tension style release. And it comes down to when somebody's shooting with a index finger or a thumb button release, if they're really so preoccupied in their mind as to what their pin's doing down there, they start to forget about everything else down here. They start to shoot a weak shot. They start to break down their form. They start all kinds of things. And then, you know, they attest one thing to something else, and then pretty soon, like I said, they start timing their shot. Some people can freeze under the target where they can hold their pin steady as a rock, but it's 4 inches underneath the dot, you know? And what do? They try to time it, and they try to push up as they execute the shot. There's so many different ways or versions of it. Yeah. So when you start talking about that, and you start to break that down and identify that, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, tension release. Why are you going to use a tension release? How is that beneficial? Well, a tension release it fires based off of tension, right? Poundage. So let's say 70-pound bow, 80% let off. You're holding roughly 14 pounds of holding weight.
And if you know what a draw force curve looks like, you
Mm-hmm.
draw the bow back, you dip into the valley, and then as you pull back into the back wall, it starts to build back up again. You should be firing from on that upstroke of the back wall. That's where you should fire. That's where you get consistency from. And when you start shooting a weak shot, or you start shooting a bow that has too much let off, you've got too wide of a valley, too many variations. So whether you're kind of down here in that low stroke of the valley, or you're on the upstroke of it going back forward, those are too much variations that you can't control. So what a tension release does is you set it to fire based off of, let's say, for example, you're holding 14 pounds. You set it to 16 or 17 pounds. So it forces you to stay engaged, pull towards the target, or push with your front arm, pull with your back arm into the back wall. Stay strong, you basically maintaining good form, and it's forcing you to maintain good form, right?
Because the shot's not going to go off.
No.
Unless you
build up to that poundage.
Yeah.
And the only way it's going to go off is if you build it up, or if it starts to collapse you and it goes the other way, then it's firing.
So I've been shooting that hinge release for a while. I shot the sweet spot at first, and then True Ball's HT now, like Aron does, or when he's practicing. So I shot that, and I'm using a lot of back tension. And with the Hoyt, like the Hoyt Defiant, I got to pull through. If I get a little relaxed, I lose it. Like it wants to go down,
right.
So it wants to take my arm off. So I don't know. And other bows I've shot in the past, other brands, I could really pull it back and just sit in this big valley forever and not really use back tension.
Correct.
And that's what I did for 10 years.
Yeah.
So
you're depending on now your eyesight on the target, and you're just doing this, right? So this is almost now out of the equation.
Yeah, my shoulder, the back tension, all that stuff's out.
Correct.
I'm just relaxed, and I'm just punching a trigger.
Right.
Right. And I shot pretty good. Well, Aron doesn't think so, but I felt like I shot pretty good that way for a while. But man, when I got a Hoyt, it changed everything because I needed to pull through. It forced me to have better form.
Correct.
So I learned that with Aron, and we were at the Total Archery Challenge. I was at the Total Archery Challenge in Snowbird, Utah. You were there, and I was shooting with Braden, and Braden had a knock-on,
the pull through
tension release,
right,
set to a certain poundage. So I'm like, I'd like to try it. Well, I couldn't really try it because it went off every time because the poundage wasn't set up just right.
Well, the other thing is, too, depending on how you load and build back into the back wall, you could, once you relax to start anchoring and engaging into your shot, you could be preloaded more so than he is.
Okay.
Right? So that's where I say maybe you set it to 16 or 17 pounds, but if your natural form and the way you engage into your shot already preloads you to 15 or 16 pounds, then you need to set your release to 17 or 18 pounds. So that way it forces you to keep pulling through that, build more poundage, and then get the shot to fire.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It's so different from person to person.
Right. And I realized that I needed to adjust it a little bit for me, but I liked the concept of it. I asked Braden if he hunts with it, and he's like, no. Yeah. And, I mean, you don't have as much control over it for hunting, but I can see how having, and I already know from using a hinge, how it improved my shooting. Like I shot a lot better this year than I ever have in the past.
Yeah.
So I like using that. But the other thing that I've kind of come to grips with over the last couple of years is, like you said, pin movement. And I didn't realize how much I would time my shot in the past. And until I got a hinge release where I couldn't just let it, like, make it go off, I didn't realize how poor my aiming was. Yeah. Because I get the pin in place, and I accepted that it floats, but I'd punch the trigger after a pretty short pull, hold. And but once I had a release that had various levels of tension, or 3 or 4 releases that I was like, and I don't know which one I've got in my hand at that moment, it's like, dang, I had to focus a lot more on keeping the pin floating, but also just accepting that I don't know when this is going to go off.
Right.
But I don't know how much that helped me in buck fever.
Well, and so that's just, that's kind of, as you start to connect the dots, right? Because at the end of the day, if the sight of an animal, be it any animal, be it a doe or be it a 200 class mule deer, if that form of anxiety takes you over the top to where you get mentally disconnected now to the situation you're in, you're kind of lost, right? Yeah. I mean, just flat out, it's. And that's where I go back to something like where I interviewed Ben Greenfield, where we talk about, cold therapy treatment and some other things that actually have been proven in some cases to help calm you in certain situations, right? It's similar. So when you talk about getting in an ice bath or getting in cold water, what is the first thing it does?
I've done it. And I did the Wim Hof method for like 2 months.
Yeah,
and I hated it.
Well, and I went really down a rabbit hole with a lot of this stuff too. Not to the extent of cryotherapy or anything like that. But yeah, the cold showers every morning, and then at the same time, cold to hot for 30 seconds. I played with a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. And I don't know that it's measurable to say, oh yeah, this helps me, that doesn't. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if someone, I guess backing up, I don't have as much buck fever as I did years ago.
Yeah.
I can handle that situation better now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to
say. Quantify.
Right.
I do think that if you make yourself get into an ice every day for months on end, because the second you get in there, every fiber of your being is screaming, "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Like it's one of the most uncomfortable, horrible feelings that there is. And you're breathing, you're kind of hyperventilating, you're just trying to man up, get through it. It's sheer pain.
Sure.
And everything about it is get out, get out, get out. And it's an exercise to me in willpower to say no,
right? No,
we're staying here, and then to make yourself do it. And over time, it gets easier and easier. And I do think, I don't know what it does to you in a physiological way, but I have no doubt that in a mental toughness way, it absolutely changes you.
But again, like you said, it's one of those things. If somebody can go out and hunt, 100 days out of the year or 200 days out of the year and have experience after experience and put down animal or have shot opportunity after shot opportunity, they're probably going to have zero problem with that, right? But realistically, when you're talking about the average hunter, bow hunter or rifle hunter, they can get 2 to 3 tags a year, maybe
especially
4,
Western,
right? If they're hunting other states, so their experiences, their opportunities are very limited,
right?
So that's where to see that someone like that is going to overcome that, it's going to take years, to get to that. But again, going to the cold therapy treatment, it's something that, like you said, the moment you jump in a ice cold shower or bath, whatever the case is, and your body was wanting to resist it, you're losing fine motor skills, you're mentally clouded. How else can you really describe what happens in a situation like that when you're sitting, for just an example, sitting in a tree stand, whitetail hunting, and you're sitting there and it's been dead and cold all day, and all of a sudden you see that buck come walking around. It's boom, instant, right? Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things. It's all those things. Your heart rate just goes. The adrenaline just, you got an adrenaline spike. Your heart rate goes up. Now you're getting to the point where you're starting to tremble or shake because, you're excited. And it's one of those things that it's very similar to what you experience in dealing with cold treatment. And so if your body can somewhat relate one to the other, then you start to be able to handle that and calm that a little bit better. And again, when I say that you need to be mentally engaged with this, if at that moment, at least you've done some cold treatment, you've done something like that, and you're like, okay, like you said, you're mentally telling yourself, no, I'm going to overcome this mentally until same type of situation when that animal comes out, you start to get all excited and jacked. Okay, calm down. He's going to come through that tree. I know that tree's 25 yards. All right, I'm going to gap my first and second pin. You start to get yourself engaged back into the process of actually following through with the situation, as opposed to, oh my God, look at the size of his rack. And then everything goes downhill. Yeah. So it's like I said, there's I think that the best way to talk about maybe targeting it, right, is one, identifying, yes, I have it, and what form do I have?
And Phil, it's weird that you talk, because there are times where an animal steps out and it's the animal of my dreams, right? And I'm calm. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, I'm pretty calm. I got this. This is great. And I shoot it and I kill it, right? And then there are times where the animal's not even half as remarkable, and it's like 3 weeks later, and I'm somewhere else in a different situation. I'm in a different place, and my heart is beating so hard I can barely hold on to the bow, and I'm shaking like crazy. And I'm thinking, but you had this mastered 2 weeks ago. What's going on? Like, why am I getting this adrenaline rush right now? And then you're trying to make it go away so you can, get get your bow back and in that right moment. And it's like, I haven't been able to pinpoint like what brings it on and what doesn't, because sometimes I feel very calm, and sometimes I feel very nervous, and I feel that tremendous anxiety. I always am being positive with myself. I'm always telling myself,
you can do it.
It's like, we got this, man. It's as good as over. But I still get that rush. And I think that's partly being primal, being a predator like we are. Like that moment gets to us. It's in our DNA. The excitement, the moment where we're about to do this. And I think everybody experiences, and that's part of the just overwhelming drive we have to do it. Right? So we don't want it to go away, but we do want to manage it.
And I touch on, it's just, you want to take care of as many issues as you can without numbing yourself to the process. Because if you can numb yourself, you can mentally get yourself in a state of mind to where you can say, this isn't going to faze me, right? I'm a robot. But then you're taking away from the experience that is hunting, right? Yeah. Those natural emotions that come about are those are the things we remember, right? I mean, and that's where, to me, that's like I said, it's just something you need to be aware of it. You need to understand if you're having issues with aiming in the archery portion of stuff, let's handle that, right? Mm-hmm. If you're having issues with the disconnect to where when all that happens, you lose strength, you lose control of what's going on there, then you need to be able to mentally engage yourself to whether it's a breathing process, whether, you're doing those kind of things or cold treatment or putting yourself in a lot of those situations, like an alpha event or like those kind of things, because those are more controlled settings. There's nothing that's going to duplicate hunting. You're crazy to think that anything will. There's nothing will. Right. But if you start doing tournament archery and putting yourself into those high pressure situations with the bow in your hand, forcing yourself to draw the bow back time after time and execute that process, then that's.
And I would say that there's no, like, for me, right off of the Alpha Bowhunting challenges, which were nerve-wracking and they were fun, but they were also like pressure. And I was purposely putting myself in that situation. Same with the Total Archery Challenge. As I'm up in Snowbird, taking 90-yard shots at a rock wall with a sheep on it, knowing my arrow's probably going to explode if I can't hit foam. Right? Those things build tension and artificially sort of put you under the kind of pressure that where you get that adrenaline, your hands are sweaty, you're having trouble getting steady. And so I think those situations are extremely valuable in preparing you for the real thing. It's not the real thing, but it's something, like you said, that's close to it, which helps you get there. This year, though, I came off of that with a lot of confidence because I did well in the Alpha. Yep. And then I made some great shots on some animals. And then I didn't make some great shots. And then it made doubt creep in that wasn't there before. Yeah. And the thing about real targets is they move. Oh, yeah. They move. They don't act the same as your foam out there. Yeah. And so it was humbling to pursue a live animal with newfound skills and then get your ass handed to you because you're not as good as you think you are, or, they're just a little more prepared. And then I think that can build more doubt. And then you can be right back to a place where you thought you got past it, but you're not. Yep. So I think that's why I like the title Targeting Buck Fever instead of Overcoming, because I think it's a continual process. And, something that I feel like helped me, there are different cues that people use for helping them get through it. And every guy kind of has their own thing, right? Yep. Aaron's is like die mother effer die, like at the moment of truth, right? Like everybody has their thing. I found that couple things that did help me this year toward the end of the year, because in the beginning I was just like, you got this, and I did well. After a couple of ups and downs, I'm like, okay, what went wrong? How come this went wrong? And I had to kind of think about some of that. And one thing that I learned was, the old saying, like, pick a spot. Yeah. I found that was really helpful. Yeah, it kind of helped me, think and you take it for granted, I think, but actually picking like the exact spot where you want it and really focusing on that spot, it definitely helped me. I think, Joel Turner says this, I've had Iron Mine Hunting on here a few times, and Joel's like, most people execute the shot 2 to 3 seconds before they should.
Sure.
Or 1 second, even. I think he might have said just 1 second. Most people execute the shot 1 second too soon, which makes the shot not what it could have been, right? And so I found that, when I started to go, okay, now's when I want to pull the trigger or I want to just fire away. No. Pick that spot, wait, and I take a little bit longer to make the shot, just 2-3 seconds longer, and I'm making a much better shot than I was before.
Yeah, and there's a lot to that, with two things, with the timing of the shot and the, I shoot a hinge release for everything now. Target, hunting, and, it's because I've shot it for so many years that if I need to manipulate my release, I can, right? And you can manipulate a hinge to go off like this if you need it to. I don't practice that all year. I practice, like you say, a slow, methodical shot with a process, with a sequence, and I try to do it as similar as I can each time. That one situation that could come about, I'm leaning on all those repetitions of practice of knowing how to properly do it and get myself in the right shot sequence. And if that moving animal happens to look like it's going to now move to where I don't have a shot opportunity anymore, but I can manipulate it if I have to, right? Yeah. But yes, I agree. Executing a properly well executed shot is key. But going back to what you said before with the other animals, that's where I kind of felt like this was a good starter for me, right? And there's so much more. Yes. The book. So I'm almost done with the second piece, and I'm unofficially, but thinking of just calling it the Alpha Bowhunting Way, right? Yeah. And it's going to be a 2-part deal, shorter read like this again, but it talks a lot about situational archery. It's going to break down effective range. Essentially, effective hunting range is what the first book is all about. And when you start talking about what's the most important characteristic that you need when you go out in the field, it's confidence. Yes. Because whether your effective range is 30 yards or 80 yards, if you're not confident there, what does it matter? It doesn't matter, right? So if you have a system, and I've really broken down this next book with a system to where it's going to show you how to break down effective range based off a specific animal size, using, measurements and then breaking it down from there. And the system I use that I've kind of implemented into this Alpha Bowhunting Way within the rule of thirds. And if you can use that, apply it with situational archery and that's what I like to use the word situational archery, because when we're talking stories to each other and we're talking to customers, we're learning off of them, This is what they did and this is where they went wrong, right? Yeah. And if you can translate that into your setup, your system, and you have complete confidence in that system because you know that, based off of your group size and doing it this way, you're putting yourself in as good of a situation you can to be successful. So when that situation comes about, if you have a mishap or something happens, whether you miss or you don't hit the animal where you intended to, and you go back and you start working your system, maybe something was a little bit flawed there, or maybe it was just that one outlier experience. Because what I say in this other book, it's this system's about 98% accurate. There's that variable that with animals, there's an uncontrollable variable that you're never going to completely be able to, whether it's movement, whether it's wind, whether it's whatever the case is. But
the rut, and they just won't hold still.
There's so many things, right? And that's where, like I said, if you can just study your situational archery and apply a system to it, achieve higher level of confidence, then that situation that could happen in the field, you may break it down and say, well, you know what? Yeah, this was probably my further third as opposed to my middle third of my effective range, and it's probably where I went wrong, right?
Yeah, you're talking about effective range, and that's something that it's taken a little bit of a hunting season to figure out. And Broderick brought this up. Brian Broderick, friend that's been on the show. Yeah. Brian mentioned getting closer. He's like, especially for newer archers or archers that haven't killed like for years and years and years, he's like, get closer.
Yeah.
That'll build your confidence. Don't take shots that are just a little too far away, because those will, and often he's like, often you'll be surprised if you try a little harder to get closer, or if you wait for that opportunity, you'll get that better opportunity. Right. And, getting a shot that you're really sure you can make and making it.
Yep.
And it's a really good way to build your confidence back.
Well, yeah, because if, prime example, if you're working to get closer and in that process, let's say you spook the animal or whatever the case is, and you don't get a shot, well, you didn't take a shot that you didn't want to take, right?
Yep.
So there's so many things to that I
think that's huge, because there are shots I took this year that, I was pushing the edge of that, and I if I think back on it, it's like, it's probably a shot I didn't want to take. I would rather get a little closer. And there's a certain element in archery that is the reason I do it is to get closer.
Right.
And so, that's something that I feel like, okay, that's something I needed to work on.
Yeah.
And started working on it later in the season.
No, 100%. And it's, like I said, to me, it's just one of those things that I try to teach based off of personal experiences and relating to somebody as to, hey, we've all been there, or we're going to be there, or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to a place of authority and you need to do it this way, right? I don't feel that way, because, like I said, there's so many variables in this game that no one's got it figured out, you know? And even when you look at the coaching structure and the coaching hierarchy of things, compound archery and hunting, bow hunting, there's no structure in place for coaching, right? There is on the competitive recurve side of things, and you can implement some of those things from the Olympic level archeries that are the archers that to compound, but some things don't apply, and that's where, to me, it's really mind boggling, because yes, is the Olympics technically the highest platform for competitive archery? Maybe so, right?
Yeah.
But you look at the vast number of who are archers, there's bow hunters,
Yeah.
And to think that, and we're guilty of it here. You new customer comes in, check draw length, check the, make sure they can handle the poundage right, get them a bow they like, set up the systems that are designed to help them as best we can, and then they'll go out the door, right?
Yeah, you're go on your way, little birdie.
Right. And as opposed to, if I can, and then you put them, most people in an index finger release, your $40 to $60 release, if I can put that $150 or $200 pull-through release in that person's hand, I can guarantee you they're going to be much better off. But the problem is there's, like I said, there's no structure in place right now for compound or bow hunting, compound archery, that says you should learn to shoot this way first.
Right.
Because again, if you stay engaged in your shot, you're going to be less likely to be distracted or shoot a weak shot.
Well, and that's something I want to circle back to, because you're like, dude, I hunt with a hinge. Mm-hmm. My question is, why do you choose to do that, and what's the advantage of a hinge over an index finger trigger release?
So when I got real bad target panic years ago, I was shooting an index finger release, and it was anxiety, it was timing, I was shooting pretty good when I was doing really well with an index finger release. But
at a target,
at a 3D animal. At a 3D animal, I was really good. When I started practicing more and shooting at dots, it seemed to magnify my anxiety on a target. So I kind of went straight into a hinge, dabbled with the tension, but I just always felt comfortable with the hinge. Now, the thing that I just want to, I guess, allude to is with the hinge, the way I anchor and the way that I can get settled in, my pin movement seems to be smaller, right? Okay. And I seem to be able to aim a little bit steadier with that. Now, when you talk about what makes your pin movement small, right? Obviously, stabilization helps. So that's one thing that you can manipulate some weight in different places,
front,
balance it.
Back bar, and all that.
To try to steady it. Uh-huh. But if you notice, if you haven't shot any target bows, most target bows are in that 55 to 65% let-off range. Most hunting bows are in that 80, now 85, some 90%, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so bad for people with anxiety issues, because if if you could do this on a bow, and most bows you really can't, but if you can take a bow and set it at 65% let off, and then 70, 75, and 80, what you're going to see is you're going to have to stay more engaged, so you're going to be more push-pull into the target, and your pin movement slows down the more weight you're holding. There does come a point to where it's too much, right?
Right.
But if you can take that in combination
so the
with
tension helps you stay steadier.
Yeah, so if you're again same scenario with a 70-pound bow. Let's start with that, right?
Yeah.
80% let off. Your holding weight's roughly 14 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take and make that a 70% let off bow, which some bows do have the option to manipulate that, you're now holding 30. So you're holding 21 pounds of holding weight on the back end. Now imagine what you're holding right now on your 70-pound hunting bow, and magnify that to where you have to hold another third more of that weight back. It's going to make you stay more engaged and stay more strong into the shot, right?
Yeah.
And what that does is it forces your pin movement will start to get smaller and choppier. The other thing that makes your pin movement smaller and choppier is if you could imagine, you can tweak draw length obviously by ½ inch usually on most module systems.
Yep.
You can also add twist to your string. Let twist out of your cable. You can manipulate draw length. When you talk about what high level target archers do, they're putting a twist or two in the string and they're checking things and they're seeing how it holds for them, and they'll let a twist or two out of their cables. They're fine tuning that process to where if you shorten your draw length just a touch, it starts to get shorter and choppier, your movement, right? If you lengthen it too much, it gets to be a little bit more open and a flow.
Absolutely.
So if you get that to that sweet spot, and then you have a release that accentuates or is in harmony with that type of system, and you can stay engaged, you can stay strong, and it the way that you execute that release, it kind of completes the circle.
Yeah.
Then that's where you're going to be most accurate.
So, Phil, because I did, I've been shooting one for a while. Like I got it last March or something. And when we hit the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge, like a 3D course, the wind was blowing pretty hard, and I would miff the shots in the wind. And because I didn't really manipulate it, I didn't know when it was going to go off, and it would just go off. And I felt like I executed a good shot, but the wind would blow me off target.
Sure.
And so that was frustrating. And then when we did the challenge and we're running head to head, and I'm competing against like Trevin, and I got to beat him, right? Like Outback doors got to go down. So, I'm breathing heavy. Not only because of the exertion, because I'm running and carrying sandbags and stuff, but also because, well, dang it, I'm in competition, man. My adrenaline's up. I'm nervous. There's anxiety there. There's like, you got to win. So I'm like breathing heavy, and then I'm trying to calm my breathing, hold my breath maybe, and then pull through. And I couldn't manipulate the release to do that. And so the same thing happened to me later, because I was determined to hunt with it anyway.
Yep.
And in the situations where it was, where I could use, where the hinge, it was all like benefits, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, shot my elk, I shot my mountain goat, great. And then I was hunting like in Alberta in like 70-mile-an-hour, 50-mile-an-hour winds. In Montana, same thing. There was times where the animals were moving so fast, you're like, meh. They stop for just 2 seconds, and then they run again. It's like you have that window, and with an index, I can hammer away.
Yeah. So, with that regards, with more time, you're going to get more experience with the release, and your body's going to identify, again, the manipulation of the release. Now, I say this with caution, because if you start trying to manipulate the release and you just started shooting a hinge recently,
then it becomes just a trigger.
Exactly. You're going to
target panic.
You're going to send yourself down a road that you shouldn't be going down.
Okay.
But if you look at a system like what Dudley put out with his pull through and his thumb button that are on the same platform, that you can train with that pull through the whole time, and then in a situation where come hunting season, you can anchor the same, and now you've got an actual index finger, a thumb button release to shoot the shot that way. A system like that could lend itself to you being able to hunt with both releases.
Right, which I would prefer, because when I pull up with the hinge, I feel so good about how the outcome is going to be.
Right.
as long as I'm not dealing with super heavy winds or the animal moving and stuff, like that's what I want to use. And I thought about it for a while, and the way Joel described it to me was the process of pulling the trigger is longer, and so in that space of time,
more things can happen with an animal. For one,
they can, but then I'm also executing a better shot. Like I'm going, okay, anytime I could go, oh, this isn't going well. Wait, okay, now, okay, and just let it go.
So now take this for example, right? So going back to the example with like Dudley's version release, and Stanislavski just came out with another system the same. The Perfx is a thumb button, and they came out with their Perfx tension. So it's the same exact handle. Mm-hmm. One's executed by virtue of a thumb button,
which I tried this year and I loved it.
But they also have the same platform for a pull-through, right? Uh-huh. So let's just say that you're practicing all year with your tension style release. You're executing good shots. You're executing strong shots. Your pin movement seems to be good.
Yeah. When
you go to shoot that thumb button, now you've already spent the time and the practice and the repetitions training yourself with that one style of release. So your mind and your shot process is proper in regards to shooting a strong shot.
Yeah.
So for that shot-to-shot situation that could be hunting, now you switch over to your thumb button and say, okay, the animal that may not give me as much time, stop, boom. You're
still shooting your strong shot.
You're still shooting your strong shot. Now, in the situation, you stock up on a mule deer, right? Uh-huh. He's bedded at 57 yards. You know you can make that shot. It's calm. He's laying there. You're going to take a shot at him laying, but you got that pull-through, right? Hook on your pull through, really squeeze through that shot. It should not change your point of impact, assuming that you have them set properly and you've practiced with them both.
Well, and that's what I did is I got that HT and then I got a trigger and they're at the right length, so they shoot to the same spot. I think they anchor in the same way. It took me a while playing around with a whole bunch of different stuff till I got one that would do that. So then I like to practice with the hinge all the time. And then when I go out, I shoot it with the trigger. And I know from experience that I tend to execute a good shot with the trigger because I'm constantly using the hinge. But as soon as I switch to the trigger and I shoot it for a week or two just at foam, I am punching the trigger, dude. I am punching the trigger.
And that's where I was when I first kind of started overcoming what my target panic was. It was after 6 or 8 months of shooting a hinge that I had hunting season and I was panicking. I was like, man, I know I can make a great shot with my hinge. I know I can shoot my trigger for a couple shots before things start creeping in. And it's because I'm a mental midget at that point that I just didn't have the right mentality and the right mindset. So I took both, right?
Yeah.
And I did the same.
What I did.
I just knew that my one release was hitting about 3 inches to the right of the other one. So I knew where I was at.
Yeah.
And I took my index finger release, but I didn't practice with it. I shot it sighting in, knowing where I needed to be.
Right.
But anytime I was practicing, I was shooting that hinge, and I was executing good shots. So for a shot, didn't bother me to shoot an index finger for a while and hunt with it that way. Mm-hmm. It just got to the point where I finally found a hinge that, like I said, if I needed to manipulate it a little bit,
you could. That's how Aron is.
But that was after years of shooting a hinge.
Same with Aron. Aron's like, I can hunt with a hinge because I can make it go off like an index.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I said, it's about the repetitions and the time and learning it. Because if you're getting a new release every few months the release that I shot my very first target tournament at ASA in 2009 with is the same release I still shoot today for my target shooting. It's the same release, not now. Grant the same model, I should say, right? Yeah. And so to think that 8 years now of shooting that same release, I know that release, right? There's a second release I started shooting, kind of playing with about 4 years ago, which is the Scott Longhorn, and that one, because of the head locks with the rubber band that you don't have to lock it, I liked it for the feature for hunting. It didn't make as much noise, and I started practicing with that. So it just got to where I learned that release. But again, I'm talking about years and years of shooting something.
What does Braden use?
Braden uses a thumb button for hunting.
Hunting.
Yeah, his pull, he shoots a pull through for a lot of the practice stuff, but he's using a thumb button for hunting.
For hunting.
Yeah, but like I said, it's just that concept of where, and I mentioned it in a seminar that we did here at the shop a couple weeks ago. I said, if I needed to make one shot at 100 yards and my life depended on it, give me my index finger release, because I know I can get engaged into the shot like I need to be, put that pin on there. And when you're used to small pin movement anyway, if you need to get on that release and make it go, I'm gonna be more confident that one shot's gonna be right in there. If you told me that I needed to do that for 6 shots in a row, don't know if it's going to be the second shot or the 5th shot that my mind's going to get the better of me, and I'm going to get punchy on that trigger. So give me my hinge, right, for that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just saying that.
That's what I noticed is in the buck fever moment that the hinge felt better. But I'll tell you this, too. I noticed one point that I had so much tension in my fingers at full draw in the moment. Like I was so, like, I wasn't relaxed. And I couldn't make the hinge go off.
Yeah.
And that was like, why didn't it go off? Why wouldn't it go off? And it's because I was just iron gripping it with these fingers that were just like, I'm like, and I didn't notice it until it happened twice to me. And I'm like, and I realized when it wasn't going off that I was just like, my hand was just, and that's from the nerves, man. Yep. It's from the excitement. But
see, that's where, a lot of people say, I just hunt. I don't like to shoot targets. I don't like to shoot tournaments. Mm-hmm. And what they don't realize, some 3D shoots, maybe if it's your first one, you're going to be really nervous. If you do a lot of those, not as nervous. But when you start getting into different formats where you have shoot-offs or you have, more head-to-head situations, and that's why the whole concept of developing the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge was that I want to give people a little taste of everything, but know that what was going to determine our winner in our game, you're going to have to be in as high pressure of a situation as I can put you in with the bow in your hand in a competitive setting, and that's head to head. Yeah, I mean, it just is. So
I can remember graduating from college, and going into the business field and doing an audit at a big Fortune 500 company, right? Like Nike,
mm-hmm.
and doing the audit and then having to sit down with the CFO and tell him there's all this stuff that's jacked up. And going in there and sitting down and being in a really, really uncomfortable situation and with a very intimidating person. And then I can remember, subsequently going into other meetings and board meetings and being put in front of people that were far my senior in this space and having to talk to them. And then later teaching kids, I taught seminary in the morning, a church class for years, and 14-year-old kids are brutal. Teenagers are brutal.
Yeah.
And so trying to keep them engaged and it's intimidating. And then I remember going to the ATA because Casey and Jordan said, hey, come hang out and podcast in our booth at the ATA. I'm like, I know like 3 people, I don't, and then sitting down and interviewing all these people I don't know was really nerve-wracking. What I'm getting at is I think that life is a series of putting yourself in really, really stressful and uncomfortable situations.
Right.
And the more stressful and uncomfortable situations you can put yourself in, the more you realize that you're capable of a lot of different things.
Right.
And that you can overcome it.
And it's just that, like I said, that moment of truth, if you've more seasoned yourself with as many scenarios as you can or situations that are similar, because like I said, there's nothing that simulates hunting. There's just not. Mm-hmm. But if you can do so many things that are going to put you in that state of mind or that place to where my decision-making skills are very critical right now. It's just that when we're hunting, if you get to the, like I said, to the point where you let the emotions overcome you, well, you're going to have a great story, you're going to have a great memories, but you're probably not going to be able to close a deal.
Yeah.
So that's where, the competitions, the classes, the seminars, the booklets, all that is with the greater vision in mind is just designed to help people know that, hey, there's not great structure, in my opinion, in compound archery or bow hunting from the masses or an adopted, recognized structure as to coaching. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I want to be that. I'm just saying I'm doing what I know how to do,
right,
and from my experiences to try to help people as best they can, so that way they can be successful.
Right.
And that's where with what we have at the shop and the competitions and like I said, the seminars and workshops, it's all building that same kind of platform or that package
just to help people be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this book, I'm just going to go real quick and then I'll let you go. the table of contents. There's an introduction. There's defining buck fever. There's chapter 2, target panic, developing ice in your veins, health matters. There's 2 chapters on that, why we do it, and a bonus chapter, the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge, and a final message. So for people that are kind of interested and want to read a little more and want to get their hands on this booklet, where can they find it?
So it's on Amazon in Kindle form on the the
ebook.
And you can also get a paperback. I've got it on alphabowhunting.com. You can buy a paperback there. We will have the audio version exclusively right now on alphabowhunting.com
Cool.
before the end of the year. So that'll be just I like audiobooks,
Me
man.
too, dude.
So this isn't going to be on Audible. I'm going to look into that, but it's going to be something that you can download and at least listen to it at your leisure.
MP3 download
Yep.
and stuff. That's really cool. It's not super long, so
No,
if you
it won't take
do
long.
choose to get your hands on it and actually read it, it's pretty short. But thanks, Phil. Appreciate you
thank
coming
you.
on the podcast. And for anybody that's here in the Denver area, check out alphabowhunting.com and see if No Limits Archery and if you want to learn some stuff, come on down to some of these classes.
Yeah, so it's all on nolimitsarchery.com. There's a scheduling link right there, and you can check it out, get scheduled in.
And when's the first Alpha Bowhunting Challenge?
May 5th and 6th. I just posted today the dates, and I've known the dates for a while. There's been some venue kind of, we're just working on some things.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I've been keeping it under wraps for a little bit. But yeah, so the dates are set, and we're going to go ahead and stay with the same platform we did this year.
Awesome. It was awesome.
No, it was fun, man, and you did a good job. So you got to come back and
I competed in the Masters. I think competing in the other division is a lot harder. There was a lot more competition.
You know what, though? It's funny because one would think that the open division, and don't get me wrong, the guys in the open division, Lane he won the finals this year.
Yep.
He smoked it, right? He did great. But the ladies, right? There's a couple ladies that you'd be hard pressed to say that they weren't going to be towards the top of the guys,
Dude,
if they
and
shot.
they had the thumb releases too.
Oh,
and I noticed, I didn't know what they're doing, but yeah, they're intimidating women.
Yes.
They are just
Yeah. Lindsay and Caitlin, they were in the
beasts.
finals. Oh yeah, and I tell you what, there was a lot of talk like you should put the women's winner against the men's winner just for fun.
Why have a?
And I'm like, you know what? I'm saving a lot of guys the misery
Their
and
egos
the yes,
can't handle this.
because I just felt. I mean, the girls were cleaning the course every other time they were out.
Yeah, dude. When I watched Caitlin hit every target, I was like, dude, I think the best I did. I can't remember if it was 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5.
I think you had a 4 out of 5 round.
4 out of 5 once.
Yeah.
And they had that almost every time.
That was
with the few 5 out of 5.
That was a baseline for both of them. Was 4 out of 5, and sometimes they were hitting 5 out of 5. So, yeah, it was fun. But the Master, I mean, you and Kenny had a great round at the end there too.
Yes.
So it was a lot of fun, and I think that some of honestly the game itself, we're tweaking just a few things on it, but we're going to keep it as it is. I don't feel like the game is broken.
No. I mean, I could play that over and over again. And the thing about it that's cool is, what I like about it is, I'm a big fan of fitness, but you don't have to be fit to do this at all,
right,
because it's really a test of shooting under pressure.
Right.
It's really a test of shooting with something that feels a lot like buck fever or is the same, right? And that's what I think is special about it, because it's not about your fitness level. So that means, you're shooting each of these shots with an elevated heart rate. And I'd argue that my heart rate's about that high 90% of the time when I'm shooting. So why do I not get my heart rate up that high every time I shoot? Because that would mimic reality. Right. For me on that special animal.
100%, man. And it's we're gonna start doing some more. I don't want to call them exhibition, but practice rounds as we get closer to the event. So we'll set up the range on a Saturday or a Sunday for 4 or 5 hours and let people come shoot some fun rounds on the course. And Braden Forsyth, he's been on some of the hunts, the sheep hunt with me and the mule deer hunt. He's going to be a new employee at No Limits Archery and the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge here after the first of the year. So he's going to be a guy that's going to be helping me run some of those practice rounds and just add more to what we're already doing, because he's super knowledgeable and technical with the gear and that platform with what we're doing with the game. So to get people some practice on it, it's going to help.
Are all the events going to be centered around Colorado, or are you going to go somewhere else?
So here's a little. We're going to film the events this year, right? We're going to do some production quality coverage of it. So because of that, I'm really leaning towards making the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge a home at No Limits Archery, right? The reason for that is when you look at selfishly the cost of production and traveling and what we have here. This range was built with the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge in mind.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna spruce it up a little bit, make it a little bit more visually appealing, and add a few things to where it's even more spectator friendly. So moving forward as we grow, it may be an exclusive event here.
It makes sense. I mean, the facility is hard to find, right? Yeah. That's tailor-made for it like this is. Yeah. We had a ton of people fly in or drive in to participate, just like they do TAC, right? Total Archery Challenge. It does go from place to place, but like, for instance, Snowbird, I think half the people that attended came from out of state. Yeah. I mean, so if you build the right event and you cover it well, I don't see any reason. You basically had as many contestants as you could handle last year already. So
we're going to change the format a little bit on the qualifying round to handle more people, and then even the finals again, there might be a curveball I throw at everybody at the finals. But we're kind of setting ourselves for growth, and at the same time with the production package that we're going to be offering, where people can see a lot of what we're doing via the internet, then if it's worth it to some people, and then being that you can come play at the finals where we do the big giveaways and the big prizes, and you don't have to qualify for that. You can come play that game, just come to the finals if you want to travel from out of town, right? Yeah. You're going to spend the time and the money and the weekend to do it. In the past we've done the film viewing and the dinner and everything for people. We're going to offer some seminars and some stuff this year, or in 2018, at the finals. So like I said, just further molding that game and that platform with fun in mind, because we gave away away over $13,000 in cash this year, right? Yeah. So we gave away a ton of money. I got some of that cash, right? We gave away a ton of money, which I want to keep doing that, but at the same token, that's almost like a bonus. That's just icing on the cake, I think. And
you had like Yeti and Sitka and others participate.
Great partners,
Hoyt, and they really helped. Jack up the prizes and stuff, which is great.
It's one of those things. Everything that we took in went out, right? Yeah. And people are looking at it, and we're looking at, as a team, as the people that helped me run the events at the end of the year. We had a meeting, kind of a little banquet recap, and I'm going over what we did and numbers and this stuff we did, and you're looking at it, it's like, it's not adding up over here, right? On the business side, are you sure you know what you're doing? Right. And it's like, look, as we start moving into this is how it's going to work, right? And it's going that way. I've had a great time running the event, so we're going to keep doing it.
Awesome. All right, folks, check out Alpha Bowhunting. Check out No Limits Archery. And Phil, thanks, man. Stay gritty.
Thanks, man.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowmen film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.